Welcome to the Woman Who Left podcast. Hello, Desi. How are you?
Hi, Nicole. I'm really good today. And yourself?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much for coming on. Hope you had a nice day.
Yeah, I've been training today and a bit of rest. Enjoying the weekend.
So we'll just crack in then and get you just to introduce yourself for everybody that doesn't know who you are. Just tell them briefly who Desi is.
So I'm Desi Gillespie. I compete in Strongwoman in the tested and untested league, under 75 and under 73 kilo categories.
Grand. So did you do other sports before you got into Strongwoman?
I've been around. So I started off as a horse rider. So I did that for kind of all my youth years. Did work with the Royal Air Force as an officer cadet. So I got really into climbing, competed rock climbing, got injured. So I ended up in the gym, thought that was all right, joined CrossFit, learned a lot there. And then I did a CrossFit event where I had to do stone to shoulder and I had no idea what I was doing. So I went to a strongman gym and then just gave it a go and someone helped me out and I got hooked and I've been trapped in the sport since.
How long then in total at the minute are you doing Strongwoman then?
About 5-6 years now. So
you're not a novice at it no more then.
Yeah.
So when did you first do your first competition?
My first competition was 2016 up in Newcastle.
Oh, lovely. What was the events? Can you remember them offhand?
I can remember the mistakes I made. So that's probably what I've always said to everyone else is you learn something from every competition.
Oh, definitely.
So I know that there was a deadlift for reps and I know clearly that there was a farmer's because I tripped over.
Oh, no way. My worst night. That's my worst nightmare.
Yeah, but I've did it and I've never made that mistake again, touch wood. But I remember that one clearly. There was an overhead, obviously, and I can't tell you the other events, but I just remember there was a farmer's. And yeah, you learn from it. You don't make that mistake again.
And did you go in I suppose any first event or any first kind of competition in any sport, you're going in kind of nervous, not really knowing what to expect. Was it the same for you as well? You kind of obviously you've been practicing the events leading up to it and that, but still on the day, you still don't know what way, you kind of don't know what to expect at the same time.
I think that's more, you just don't know what to expect. So you don't know what you let yourself in for. So oh, I'm deadlifting and I've deadlifted a lot of times. What's the difference going to be in front of all these people?
Yeah.
So I think it's learning, but I think that's from other sports as well, is what it's like to have other people. And one thing I always learned was to always just listen to one voice. And I learned that from especially climbing. So I think it's trying to practice from what you've always known. And I think now, just the more you do, the more you know how to handle it, but you're always going to be nervous. You're competing at the end of the day, you want to do well.
Yeah. And would you ever have stage fright whenever you're in the competitions? Does that ever...
It depends what the event is. If it's something I'm really nervous about, I'm like, oh no, I've got to perform, or you feel like you're on the spot because it's oh, if you get this is what's going to happen next. I think that's probably where I get more stage fright than sometimes what I try to do is just block out what's actually happening and just be like, no, I'm going to do X reps. I'm just going to do this. It's just another training session. And that's probably hard to manage that stage fright. I did Arnold's last year and I got out and just saw all the people. My heart rate, my watch was heart rate 166. I was like, oh God, I'm just standing here watching people.
And you were competing in Arnold's last year, were you? Sorry, I missed that wee bit. Did you say you were competing?
Yeah, the log and deadlift at the NEC.
Oh, yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it was one of those. It was such a good event, but the crowd scared me the most. And I don't know why. I think it was just all in my head, just being oh, what if I don't get a rep? Not that if it would ever change. It's not like they're going to boo me off stage, but...
Yeah. Was that one before or just during lockdown, or was that just around the time of the pandemic, wasn't it, that one?
No, that was October last year. So it was the first UK Arnold's. Yeah, so it was one of those that you qualified online. But yeah, an amazing event.
Cool. And your full-time job as well as a physio. So do you specialize in sports physio, or I know you work in the NHS, so do you just kind of do general physio aspects in work, and then do you specialize outside of work?
So I actually specialize in sport, and I did that a lot, especially pre-lockdown. That was always what I did, was working in multi-sport with different teams, and across all age groups really. And then unfortunately when COVID hit, that's where I picked up NHS work again, because it was just a stable job. So musculoskeletal, so bone, muscle, joint, that is still my specialty, but obviously it's a very different population and different kind of outcome. So at the minute I'm part-time working in GP practice. So instead of seeing a GP now, you see someone like myself as a specialist, and just to get get to the right person as soon as possible. But then I still work with sport teams, so with England netball and American football teams, just to keep that in, because that's my favorite part.
Would you have got to travel much with the sports teams, like to different, like if you're saying American football, I was going to say American rugby, it's not. Let's not get that mixed up. American football, would you have got to travel and stuff around with them as well?
So I've travelled more with netball. So I've done a lot in Australia, New Zealand, and then I used to work with Paralympic shooting, so with the Great Britain team. So it was, again, this was probably one of my challenges with training, is when you're traveling around a lot. So I had like a 6-week stint where I did 2 weeks Australia, 2 weeks England, 10 days Australia, 2 weeks England, 5 days in Colombia, and I had no idea what planet I was on by the time I got back.
No, I really wouldn't. Oh my god, but you're probably just getting over being in Australia, and then you're coming back, and then you're getting used to UK time again, and then you're going off again. God.
And really, I think my flight, I remember my flight was delayed, and then I ended up getting back at 3 a.m. before starting a netball camp at 8 a.m. the next morning.
Oh, was that the same?
Fuels me.
Was that the same athletes that were away with you that were coming back as well? Had to get back up at 8, or?
Yeah, so they were like the first group of my trips. So they had like a month to sort themselves out, whereas because I went out for shooting to Colombia, that's the challenges of working in sport. It's a lot of hours, a lot of very demanding, very unsocial hours, and that's where kind of a bonus of working in the NHS is having a bit more kind of consistency, which then helps the training consistency.
Yeah, and do you must be in full-time like sports physio?
I would say yes. At the minute, and this is where COVID has been a real eye-opener for me, is I almost able to like reevaluate where I wanted to go. I love working in sport and I love everything that it involves, but it is almost, it takes away like what I want to be as a competing athlete. So that's where kind of end of lockdown 1, I don't even know what date that was anymore. I was like, okay, let's have a look at job. Where do I want to be? And then I was able to like build it up as kind of the world built up again. So now I'm part-time NHS and part-time in sport, and then having given myself kind of day and a half of like actual just myself time to work on recovery and actually sort out my training, sort out nutrition, because realizing how important that is to actually do well, and hoping for obviously a big couple of years competing. So that's where it's having to, I wouldn't say make sacrifices, but actually organise my life to be able to do well.
So then, in that case, like working for the NHS fitted you quite well then for 21 for all your competitions.
Sorry, say that again.
Working with the NHS doing the physio then would have fitted in quite well with your competitions in 21 with the BNSF Brits, the Euros and the Worlds as well. So you would probably have had, that's probably when you actually probably realised you needed more time off from doing the sports physio to actually focus on, your own training.
It was exactly. So I remember like a month where working every weekend sport and every day in the NHS, like weekday. So you're just fitting in training in between, or training at 6 a.m. to then go to work and work kind of like a 15-hour day, or finishing a camp. I think I got back from Isle of Man trip and then I had to go straight to the gym to do a session. And that's where, yes, you're getting the movements done, but it's almost how much you're getting out of it.
And when do you get time to sleep?
What's that?
Oh goodness.
Knows how much I fuel off caffeine and coffee.
I was going to say, like, everybody underestimates how sleep really does help you recover. Like I used to think myself, oh, you only need to live off like 4 hours sleep, until I started competing and researching a wee bit more, and like they tell you now that you actually need between 8 and 10 hours sleep, because most of your recovering is done in your sleep because your body's just not using up any energy. So the competition, I think one of the first ones you done was the England's, and tell us a wee bit about that. For that, was that like a competition that led into it wouldn't have led into BNSF Brits then, would it have, or was that a different
So there was the England BNSF, and then I did the kind of the untested England, the 2 leagues. So I basically did both at the same time. And then I didn't qualify at the untested for any further, but carried on with the BNSF league, which got to Brits, Euros, and that kind of led on. If you're on a podium or you get invited, you then go forward to the next stage.
And then you went on then to win the BNSF Brits. So tell us a wee bit about that. How did your prep, nutrition, recovery and that go? How did you fit it all in round work?
I said, so this is where I remember I was so knackered having competed 2 weeks before. And I remember saying to my coach, I was like, after this, I'm having a week off. I don't want to go near a gym. I just want to eat what I want. And like every kind of cut I've made has actually got easier trying to make weight. But I remember for that one, I was like, don't even care anymore. And I got on the day, I was like, just going to get through these events. I was almost done with it. And that's probably the best thing that could have happened, because I was just so chilled on the day, because I was just getting through the events. I wasn't bothered about almost placing, and just remained consistent, because at no point did I panic, which is probably what I wouldn't want for anyone else, is that they were so knackered going into it. But then I learned, I was like, what could I improve for next time? So my recovery just wasn't there. Again, not sleeping, working all hours. My cuts were a lot harder at the beginning of the year, and because they got easier, then I felt better on the day. So it's almost after that I was like, oh, actually maybe I can compete. And then it kind of all started to click. I then put in to work to reduce my hours, because I was like, no, I want to focus on this. And then it is like, what can I do to recover? What do I need to change in my life to actually put some more focus into it? Because I know I can get, like, it was getting by with kind of the raw bit, but to actually keep excelling, you're going to have to make some changes. And that's probably, it was that month, August, where I did the England and the BNSF Brits, which made the big difference, because it actually made me realise that I could actually do something.
So what did you change then leading into the how do they say it? WHEA. I don't know what way it's meant to be said. The Euros, and what did you change? Because that was the second one after Brits, was it?
Yeah, so that was only 4 weeks between each competition, so it didn't feel like there was much of a prep. But I think my mindset changed between those two, because 4 weeks isn't really much. We all said you can't really train it, you can't peak it. You get kind of a week deload, 2 weeks to train, and then another week like deloading going into the comp. So that one was more of a, what can I do different? I actually went in thinking, oh, I could actually have a fighting chance, not just going in to be like, oh, let's get this done because, I just want to nap afterwards and eat.
Oh, I forgot to even mention, you actually won Brits as well. Like, you actually won that one. I forgot to even say that. You got gold.
I know. I have never been more shocked in my life, because the girls are absolutely insane. But this is one thing I try to be as consistent, and that actually paid off on the day. Just being consistent across all events. And I always say it's a bit of luck as well, because as I said, the other girls I compete against were absolutely amazing and insane.
So getting back to the Euros then, so what were the events in that one? So
for Euros, it was a log and an axle, like switching for reps. We had a silver dollar deadlift for reps, a frame for distance. There was a van pull, and then we had a stone run, or a stone and sandbag loading medley. And it was again, sorry.
Go ahead. There's a wee bit of a delay, so I'm thinking you're finished, and then I hear you talk again. What were you going to say?
No, I just said it was kind of, I thought were quite hard events, being very endurance, like a lot of like max time. So you were going for the whole 75 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was a good day. But again, the girls, just the standard is so high, and it's anyone's game until the last event, which is good. It makes that bit exciting.
What's your favorite thing about competing in Strongwoman at the events? Like, what do you most look forward to, apart from the events, obviously, and winning and all? But what do you most look forward to on the day?
I think it's like the other competitors, especially at the comps. Like, that's probably where a lot of my friends come from. Is that on the day, it's, even though you're at a competition, everyone is so nice. They help you out. They could have you know, they will cheer you on, like you're on the floor and there's someone like your competitors actually shouting you to get up and just keep going, when that's probably a sport that I've never seen that in before until Strongwoman. And as I said, like going out when we went to Worlds, like it's actually going out with a bunch of friends, which is really good. So obviously the event's very exciting, but it's probably the people and the community that it brings.
Yeah. What so nutrition wise, have you got a nutritionalist that covers all your meals and stuff, gives you your macros?
Yeah, so I'm with Vicky Masita, so she's the Tiny Titan if you go on like social media. Yeah, so I've been with her for about a year and a half, so she's helped me massively. And again, it's not just what macros is it's about managing life, and that's probably where she's helped me a lot, managing that stress of even just work. I'm like, how do I fit in meals when, you know, I'm on abroad, or, you know, can't in a bubble. That's kind of the big thing when you're in isolation bubbles, is like, how do you get food when you can't actually go out? Or so that's where she's been really good. And as I said, every cut has got easier. Like Worlds was the most easiest cut for an evening weigh-in abroad, and I came in so light having eaten on the day. So that's where she's helped me out loads. It's just the more like you work with her, the easier it gets, because she just gets to know you better and what works for you. Yeah,
and you get out what you put in as well, don't you?
Sorry, say that again.
You get out what you put in as well, like the effort you put in, you know, you get the results come easier.
Oh yeah. Because there have weeks where, like she says, don't be an arsehole, but sometimes I am, and then I have to be like, I did it again. And then you just have to accept you make a mistake, you take what comes afterwards, and then get back on track. So I admit I do that too.
Yeah, I know, like as an open athlete, I take the mickey sometimes out of like what I eat. I've just had, like this morning I had before training I had an apple tart.
Was it delicious?
It was so nice. I worked it off anyway, so it was all right. And then recovery as well, like so even actually no, before we go on to recovery, because I go ahead of myself sometimes, nutrition. So like what is your, are you on a calorie, do you be on a calorie count, or like do you just, as long as you meet your targets of protein, your grams and your carbs and stuff, is that how you work yours as well? As like exactly, would you have a wee chocolate bar and stuff? I couldn't live without my chocolate bar in between.
I'm a sweet monster, so I definitely am all about the sweeties. So yeah, I have my kind of macros, and then obviously she advises what I should be having, so I can't just like fill it with sweeties, but it's kind of the best way that I can stay on track. So it depends where I am in the competition cycle. When it comes nearer the time, I'm very much following exactly what she says to have and when, but kind of out of it to make sure I stick to it is making sure that I'm not restricting myself so much, and that, you know, in my carbs I weigh out my sweets, but then that means I get my sweets before training, so then I'm happy.
Yeah, it's always a good thing whenever you get your sweets in. I'm trying to think, is there anything else nutrition wise that we need to cover? But how do you find, like I've never really had to cut for anything, so how do you find as an under 75, where do you normally sit weight wise to have to cut then?
Well, it's evolved. So I used to like compete under 82. So I started off in just the untested league, because that's kind of all I knew. So I used to compete under 82, and 2020 I thought I was under 82. I got to the event and I was actually 83 and a half, and had to run for 40 minutes before I got to the event. Then I met Vicky, and kind of so that's where I can't say I've been in a consistent weight, because like September 22 I was probably around 83 kilos, whereas now I then sat around 77, and I now probably sit around 74, 75. But it's because we're continually working on it and dropping a weight group again to be under 73 for the untested league. But so yeah, it's been over about a year and a half. Like
it's been a lot of learning then for you too.
Yeah, as I said, that weigh-in was horrific. The one I did for England's BNSF, I was in the bathtub in a bin bag the night before, trying to make weigh-in.
Oh god, I know. Like
I found my lightest shorts and lightest bra now to weigh in with.
My husband used to have to weigh in for judo, and like some of the things he read and some of the things he pulled years ago, you wouldn't even contemplate it now. It's just so some things are just so unhealthy and unrealistic, I suppose, at the same time. Like there's people I've come across and they're trying to cut 10 kilos in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, you're never going to get 10. Like, what are you, like, you're literally not going to have to eat for 2 weeks. And I think that's what they had to do at one stage.
And I think it really depends on each athlete. Like, so for me, to lose a kilo feels like it's going to be impossible, and it does. And I know myself, that's where I have to realistically think where I am. Whereas I know other people in the gym, some of the guys, they can easily cut 3 kilos in a week, and they just know that they can. But it's learning your body of what is safe, how much water can you actually lose safely. And it's, if you're in a 24-hour weigh-in, that makes a massive difference between a morning weigh-in. So it's learning what your body can and can't do, and where you have to sit naturally to then be able to compete. So I know, like that first comp where I was in the bathtub with a bin bag, I was so ill for all the events. And then when I had a 40-minute run, I was so ill, and of course I was first in the deadlift. Of course that happened. And I was like, I couldn't even see the ref at one point because I was just blacking out. But
and you don't like, for men, it is so much easier to cut weight, I think, than it is for women, because we've got the likes of our periods, and
you're not advising,
depends where you are in your cycle.
I'd have to learn.
Just depends where you're in your cycle and how much water. Like we hold quite a lot of water weight as well. I know men do as well, but it's, I don't know, like I just feel that it's definitely a lot harder for our bodies to cope with it than what men's are. Because I think isn't it like with testosterone in men, it makes their thyroid more active, so then it makes it easier for them to cut weight, from memory, just from what I remember reading one time.
Yeah, it's because with a woman, because we're continuously fluctuating throughout our cycle, whenever, like, unless you really learn your body, and that's where there are all the apps that I've got some athletes to use, is to know what you're like, and then it's almost tracking. So if you know comp's going to be on day 5 or whatever, it's how can I plan around that to make sure that I've optimized, what have I practiced beforehand to know what I'll be like on that weigh-in. So it's almost not practicing weigh-ins, but practicing kind of where your weight fluctuates. So again, it's very varied about stepping on and off scales for some people, but if that's just how you learn what your body is like, that's probably the key part, is learning your body, and you just that takes time.
And then as well as that, with you being a natural athlete as well, do you work around your cycles quite a bit as well? You know, with your certain times of the cycle, you're going to have higher estrogen levels and so on and so forth.
Personally, I've not really ever had too much of an issue in terms of my biggest issue is that I have horrific hunger the week before I start. So that's where I know I'm going to eat like a monster.
Yeah, I'm still listening, sorry.
So that's where I work with Vicky a lot. So she actually gives me a bit more calories in that week, and then we almost reduce it the week after, just because we know that the week before is where I get the munchies. That's probably what I've learned from that. But actually, the fluctuation, again, it depends what I eat.
Yeah. Anybody I usually chat about that, usually I'll say the same thing too. It just depends. So then it brings us to recovery then. So you were saying with working that you've been trying to fit in an hour and a half a week. Is that right now for recovery?
A day and a half, yeah.
What did I say? An hour and a half? A day and a half.
A day and a half. Yeah, so now I work NHS like 3 days a week, and then sport is kind of, it varies depending on the season for the sport, but that's more for the weekend. So now I definitely have kind of 1.5, 2 days a week where that's kind of my time. So that's where I can focus on recovery. It's making sure I get my meals prepped in those times. What can I do to actually plan my week of where things going to go, and especially like where am I going to get a heavy session? And that's one thing I'm not good at, and I have to learn, is making sure I rest. So my coach has ended up having to tell me how much time to rest, or I've ended up doing like a Sudoku puzzle in between sets to make sure I sit. But obviously when I'm busy, I'm like, no, I can get this done. I just need a minute and I'll be fine, back on it. Yeah. But you can see how much it affects the performance and kind of the outcome of what you're going to get, not just going through the motion, but thinking about why you're doing it, getting the optimal rep per session. And that's probably where it's making sure that on a work day, I'll be like, oh, this session I know takes around an hour and a half, whereas my event session might take kind of 3 hours. So I make sure that's on the day off.
And like, do you do saunas or the cryo spas or anything like that? Or do you get one of your physio buddies to give you physio?
No. If anything, that I'm not very good with treatments, that I've learned that if anything, they personally make me worse. And that's where I always say to athletes, it's what works for you. So some people prefer treatment, some people don't. I'm just someone that I react quite a lot. So I avoid treatments. Like if I roll on myself, I know exactly what I'm doing. I use saunas, definitely. So in the sauna, we have like an ice room and a sauna. So it's going in there and using the ice bit, going over especially all the sore bits, and then like alternating. That's what I found works for me.
Yeah.
And then making sure it's even as simple things as just going out for a walk, which I didn't realize until I started cutting my hours from work, how much that makes difference. And like you said, now actually making sure I get 8 hours sleep a night makes a massive difference on kind of training.
And less caffeine intake as well.
And I haven't got that far yet.
that's another stage for another day.
That's a future problem.
Oh, I find I could probably drink about 3-4 cups of coffee a day, but see, if I drank any coffee after 6 o'clock, oh Jesus, I may as well be up to 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I just can't settle the sleep whatsoever. So I've had to restrict the times because I still love my coffee.
Oh, my cutoff is 2 p.m. It always has been.
I that's my cutoff now as well. I've learned not, well, actually, like I used to drink coffee right up to 10 o'clock at night, but that's because I'm a nurse. So I would be in work till like 8-9 o'clock, and by the time I get home, I feel like I need an energy boost just to get like housework or something done. But you learn all these things as you go along.
We're always learning.
Yeah. And you also, I have a wild habit of bouncing to and from things, but back to the nutrition as well. You have the protein queen. She sponsored you. Does she equip you with your sweet treats?
Oh yeah. So Steph at the Protein Queen, I've been using her stuff for years because, like, personally, I've always been a fan of supporting a small business.
Yeah.
And so it's a way of getting that protein in, because that's probably always the hardest part. But being the sweet monster I am, I need my sweet treats too. So it's a good way of combining it. Mm-hmm. So Steph, the wizard that she is, making those treats. It's 2 birds, 1 stone.
I've seen quite a lot of athletes using her, and some of the treats she has, oh my god, they're just like, does she do, I think it's these pancake ones she does, or like they look like a cookies, that's the ones, they just look to die for. Oh my god. So that was Euros, really, wasn't it? And then to cover the so you got second in the Euros. And then you got, did you get, was that an automatic invite then to the Way Worlds?
So it's actually Brits got us to Worlds, because it was the first time they'd ever done a Euros before. So anyone that got qualified at Brits instantly got Euro and World. So I don't know how it's going to work this year, if it is going to be kind of you have to go through the pathway again. Mm-hmm. But anyone that podiumed at Brits got to Europes and Worlds.
And you're so polite, because you don't talk about you're a world strong woman. You're a gold medalist world strong woman.
I don't always believe it yet.
Do you get a wee bit of like what do you call it, imposter syndrome whenever you think about it sometimes?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I still, on the day, I was just like, what, me, what? Because on the day, like on the World's Day, the first event, I messed up. I had a paddy. I cried. I called my friend and just cried, because I was like, why am I here? Clearly, if I can't even do the first event, which was meant to be my strong event, and I've messed it up. So I get it a lot. And then leading up to the event, I'm known for my temper tantrums, or my training tantrums. So Instagram has a lot of them, because they can be quite funny. But there is sometimes I'm like, why am I even here? I'm tripping over my own feet, or I can't see, some of us have our days where we can't even lift the warm-up weight, or, you just mess up everything on the day. And I had loads of those like leading up to Worlds, and this is where kind of having the right people, training friends around you, makes such a difference. So like one person in particular was literally my rock leading up to Worlds, because he would literally, I'll be throwing my belt, throwing everything, and he'll just like carry on, put the plates on, and be like, and again.
But you do need that. You do need somebody like that, because if you had been on your own, you probably would have just walked straight out the door and said, fuck this. And away you go.
Yeah, and it was literally at the events actually at Worlds. I was like, I don't even want to see the score sheet. I'm just gonna go do the event, see what happens. So the first event I messed up. The second event I tripped. Like,
oh Jesus. Just no luck from the first two, and then that, you're right though, and then you have to kind of think of it differently, because if you keep worrying about the past two events, you're not going to focus on the event that you're doing at hand too.
And that was exactly that, because that's where after it was the Axel for reps, and it was just a horrible bar, and that was always a good event. And I was the last to go, and I was like, they've only done 3 reps, this will be fine, no pressure. And could not clean it to save my life. Somehow almost caught it as a zercher, absolutely, like any picture you see after, I just had a massive bruised egged arm from it, had my meltdown. And then the next event, I saw the people before me go, and I was like, I just need to get there. So I did 4 runs, and I was like, I have a little sit down, I just have to do 5 and I'll be fine. And then I was walking along, and I was like, this lactic acid is getting real. And then suddenly I put my foot down, and I was like, that's not going to hold.
No.
Bang, tried to do a Usain Bolt and get as much as I could. And it was one of those, I was like, how has this happened? How have I fallen here of all places? But I won by 0.2 centimeters. So you're not out until the measuring tape has happened.
So you didn't even know where you were at all in the board leading up to the third, fourth, was there 5 events, wasn't it?
7.
Oh yes, so there was, because there was the motorbike, was it motorbike deadlift or something? And
we had a tire flip, we had a ball throw. That was the morning, so like first. Sorry?
He's had the hold as well, the hold out in front.
Oh, that was horrific. And it was almost like mind games coming from the other competitors. She was like, this is my event, I'll win it. And I was like, okay. And I was getting, there was a lot of mind games. I had to just like go to my friend and be like, please tell me, is this true? They're like, nope, playing mind games. I was like, what? But I had to be like, nope, play your own game, forget about everyone else, just do what you can. And I didn't realize that, I thought I was so, like, again to the last event, and I didn't realize that I just had to kind of finish the last event and that was it. But I remember, like, I put the last bag down and I was going to the back, I was like, what happened, what is it? Poor guy.
And whenever they shouted out your name winning, like, what was can you remember what your reaction was?
So you're gonna have Maria, but I basically like cried into my lap. Because basically they said it as soon as I'd finished the bag run, that as long as I didn't mess that up, I was already like almost, I didn't know this, but that was me on the like winning it anyway. But at the end they said it, and poor Maria had me like, oh my god, what's happened? Ow.
But you need somebody like that to cheer you on.
The girls were great, and I know you've heard Andrea, and you're gonna have Maria, and like the girls that was out there were absolutely amazing, and that makes a big difference, having like that little community, especially in COVID world, when you couldn't really have your friends and your family like you normally would at a competition, and then they instantly become your family.
And there was quite a lot of UK and Irish ones over at that, like you nearly dominated
there was
the whole scene.
We definitely took over Finland.
definitely I enjoyed watching some of the videos back. I don't think it was on, was it on like live or anything? I don't think it was. I just think I was watching it from somebody's Instagram feed at one stage.
The problem was because of like COVID, they were like reduced in staff, and we ended up being put in 2 separate groups, so they had to like separate the staff as well. So that's where they did like a live score sheet, and that was it.
Because the restrictions were still quite different over there at the time, weren't they? There was a couple of ones weren't sure if they were even going to get back or get over and get back, especially ones from Ireland, because
the worst event was that COVID test to be able to get home. That was the hardest event, waiting for that test to come back.
Was it a full PCR you had to get done on the way back?
No, we only had to do a lateral flow, so we could do that in our room, but all of us were like, it's time, let's do it together.
And so even before, like, before the process, before getting on stage or on the heads away on the platforms, before the event started, basically is what I'm trying to say. God, did you just have to lateral flow that morning as well before you went on, or was it just before you like last night? Or
no, actually it was all right. So to get into Finland, you only had to have like your passport, so actually getting there wasn't the problem. Getting home was probably harder. And especially around, so I appreciate like one of my close friends, she couldn't go in the end because of this isolation post and like trying to get time off work. So obviously that's where it's hard having to use your annual leave and trying to factor in what if I have to isolate for 10 days should my PCR on return come back positive. So that was always the stress of it. So I remember like when we got told about the new restrictions and you're like, oh no, the weekend that we were away, that's when the kind of review was going to be. I was like, oh, if that turns to a 10-day isolation, what am I going to do? You know, I had to like discuss with work, and my work were brilliant with it, like supporting me. But obviously that's where it was a factor in itself. I was like, if they say no, that I have to be in no matter what, even if like, you know, because it was obviously a choice to go out there. It's not like I've got unwell because of being at work. But you know, when you're like, being in the airports and whatnot was a whole experience. Like, oh, how can I not get COVID? Being in this massive, you know, plane of people, and actually all of us came back absolutely fine.
Oh, that's good. Because I didn't hear anybody either come back, even from like down south or from here, like getting testing positive or anything after. It seems to be more farce now, like more on the uprise now though, because of just everybody's just going back to normal life, really, aren't they? And they're meant to be bringing removing the restrictions and the masks and stuff. I don't think the NHS will ever remove them pretty quickly, though. I think they'll probably keep them in for a while after, and the Pfizers and all that crack.
Yeah, I think again it'll be like personal choice, and I think that'll make a big difference. And I think we'll all adapt to this new world, that we're not going to go back to exactly like we were pre-COVID. Like there's always going to be a bit of or maybe I'll have a mask on in this environment, or if I'm with my close friends, it's okay. But if I go out to a gig, that's a whole different story.
Yeah. I still don't like going out into like Asda and stuff. I was never a wild massive people person. I have maybe people like, and I like enjoy doing like the podcasts and all that, but like outside of that, I just don't like, I'm not a wild massive people person.
You got the right people, that's fine.
I get some people wouldn't even think that about me. Like I just don't like being in crowds. So so I'm trying to think. What was did I ask you what your favorite part about Worlds was?
I think this is what I've always said. It's about being with the right people. So being with the girls in that environment and just being able to go abroad. So for me, like I've always wanted to be able to represent my country on an international stage. That was like my goal, and I felt like that was my tick, that I had done that. So it was nice to be able to go out and having the right people, having a big Brit contingency made a massive difference.
I'm trying to think. I've already asked you that one. So getting back then, so what do you love most? Now I'll just have to cut this part out because I've just lost myself, because you've just answered the question I'm going to ask you again, but it's a different question to that, right? We'll get on to the anti-doping. So you play a big part in the anti-doping scene. So you're what's your job, your role in it?
So as a physio, obviously we have to educate our athletes on the guidelines, especially working with national governing bodies. That's where they all have to follow these rules. So when we're in tested, so like the BNSF and the WEA, they follow the World Anti-Doping Association. And basically they're just kind of set rules of what you can and can't take. So kind of a guideline that, again, make sure that we teach our athletes this and then follow it as an athlete myself. It's making sure that all medications are checked, that nothing's prohibited in or out of competition. So personally, like I use an inhaler. If I take more than 8 puffs in a 24-hour period, then that would then make me prohibited. But it's making sure, like if I was having an asthma attack, I would then get a therapeutic use exemption form, but it's knowing these processes beforehand. And then if it's taking supplements, proteins, it's knowing how to check it to make sure that you're minimizing that risk.
Even your protein powder?
Yeah, so everything like that, there's a risk of it being contaminated, so not even intentionally. So there have been cases where obviously it's just contaminated because some other product might contain it for whatever reason. So there's something called Informed Sport. So it's a website where they batch test certain products. So then you've got kind of, if like at Brits we got tested, so we had to write down on a form, have you taken anything? So I declare my inhaler, all my vitamins, declare my protein, and that the way I mitigated it is that I go on this informed sport. They had this batch number, therefore if it came out positive, I've almost done everything I could to mitigate that risk. So that's where it's been. So we've got the UK anti-doping, so UCAD, and that's just a website where it gives you kind of all this information of how you can make sure you minimize that risk. But I guess that's where probably in Strongwoman we don't talk about it enough, especially in the natural league, of what it does mean and what you need to do and how you can mitigate that risk. So depending what medication you're on, doesn't mean you can't take it, but it might be that you have to have this TUE, so exemption form, to be able to continue to take it for your health, but also while competing. So that's probably where my job helps a lot, because I know all this stuff inside out and what it means to go through the testing process. So we have to, obviously with an athlete, if they need a chaperone, that's kind of where I would come in. And then obviously when I'm getting tested, having someone watch you pee, it's not like a big shock to the system. Whereas if it's your first time, you might be like, okay, I can't go because you're there, even though that's their job and what they do day in, day out.
Do they actually follow you into the cubicle?
Yeah, they have to watch the streamer flow. That is the rule. Yeah. So if you ever get tested,
I suppose you could easily, if you had if you were carrying like a bum bag or something on you, you could easily just swap it out. So that's probably why they have to come in and take it.
So that's exactly the reason. So like you've got your rights as an athlete, so you have your right to do a cool down. So if you get tested, so you get, like, they call you up and say, they show their ID and say, we're anti-doping, you've been selected to get tested. So sometimes it's random, sometimes like at Brits, anyone that won had to get tested. So then they go through the process, but you've got your right to cool down, to have nutrition, to deal with any injuries, and you have your right to go to your prize giving. So that's where we had our prize giving. So they have to just watch you the whole time. So you're not allowed to, once they declare that you are being tested, you can't leave the tester's site, but you can say, we've got the prize giving. So they just stand and watch you, and then you get taken back into your room.
Why, what do they expect you to do in between the time they tell you to the time they actually get the sample off you?
But then that's the big thing. So you could go off and, steal a sample or do something to, like, so if you look at, like, this is when you're looking at the Olympic sports, how many issues there have been. That is why they have to be really vigilant, and these are the rules to make sure that, that is the process, and that there are all the kind of violations. So if you try to run off and do something, that's a violation in itself, and then that's how you get banned for X amount of years. So it's not just having something in your system. There are 11 ways as an athlete you can get banned, be it tampering with the process. So if you try and give a false sample, or amend the sample pot for whatever reason, there are all ways. So that's where kind of, again, the insight is a really good thing, because I just know what to expect and what you need to do and why you have to do it.
That's very interesting, because I didn't even know that an inhaler was counted as part of that. Like, if you took a certain amount of puffs, that's mad.
So even like your blue inhaler, I think you can only have 200 micrograms per 24 hours. If you're having an asthma attack, you just go to your doctor, say, I had an asthma attack. You probably end up in A&E anyway, and then they would give you what, I've taken this is proof that you were in an asthma flare, and then you'd have to submit it. But it depends if you get tested in or out of competition. So that's another big thing. So depending where you are in the elite pathway, so kind of Olympic level athletes, they have to kind of declare where they're going to be at all times, so they can get tested in or out of competition, whereas we can only get tested in competition. So it's kind of what you take over a certain time frame. But if it's in your system, it's in your system. So they could test you from almost the morning of to kind of through the day.
So I suppose so paracetamol and codeine and ibuprofen, like them kind of things, if you were taking them for pain, do you have to declare absolutely them as well? Like if you're taking anything for pain, do they test them? Like, for somebody who's never, like, I don't really know anything about the whole testing process or whatever.
Paracetamol is a pretty safe drug. So there's something called Global Dro, so global and then DRO, and that's a website that you show where you bought your product. So there's only 7 or 9 countries where you can buy medication from. So if for any reason I bought paracetamol in Germany, it wouldn't, like, if something came up, that wasn't you know, a tested product. So you can buy it from the UK.
Yeah.
So paracetamol is normally right. And basically anytime you take a medication, so things like cold and flu, that's always where people get caught out. So you see a lot in the news that people have ended up with doping bans because they took Sudafed or something like that, because there's certain drugs in there that can affect performance. So it's making sure, like, I've got a sore throat, so I get cold and flu. I bought it in the UK. I would put it in online and check, is it prohibited or not? So this is what we do with our athletes as well, is that if we were going to a different country, is I tell everyone to buy their stuff, like your normal, do you get a headache, ibuprofen, your stomach medications, those kind of things, buy it all in England where you know it's not prohibited, so that when you go abroad you're protected, whereas you don't want to go buying it abroad in a country, say, I don't know, I keep picking on Germany, we'll go Finland, where if something happened and I got tested and I said, like, you know, oh well, in England it's not prohibited, because they might have the same package but have a different ingredient list. So that's probably a really key thing to learn, especially as UK athletes, is you've got to buy it in your homeland. And then basically, if you go on this website, you can, at the end, you save a PDF to show that you looked it up. So with my inhaler, if for any reason it came up in my system because it's got a certain thing that I can't take more than 8 puffs of, if it came up in my system, I'd be like, oh, here's that I checked that, you know, it's within, it is prohibited, it is not prohibited, and I've only taken X amount, and then it's just shown that I've done everything to mitigate that risk.
Because to me, for somebody who's no experience with prohibited drugs or anything like that, is I would always just thought of the usuals, like your testosterone and your steroids and your
so depending what sport you're in,
you know, them kind of things. That's the only things I would ever have thought on.
Yeah, so depending what sport you're in, there are different kind of categories. So I used to work with Paralympic shooting. So basically, if you take something that accelerates your heart, that will be no benefit to the sport. But obviously with their drugs, it's anything that slows your heart rate down. That is a benefit, the performance enhancement drugs are ahead.
So like your diazepams, like, and
beta
blockers and all, Yeah,
so working with Paralympic athletes, a lot of them are on those kind of medications because of their other disabilities. Yes. So it's having a doctor say there is nothing else we can give to manage that, therefore they are allowed to take it. But
like someone would be on melatonin and stuff as well, like, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So even insulin, depending like what dosage is prohibited, but obviously if you've got type 1, you're not going to let them. So they then have to apply, but that means it will come up on their system when they get tested, but they've got the certificate to say it can be in my system because I need it.
Yeah. I suppose that's the same too then for your metformins as well. I've heard that like metformin can be used
it's one
in
of those.
ways.
It depends what sport. So kind of in weightlifting or anything like a weighing category, like a furosemide, so that people would use that to try drop weight. So obviously that's a prohibited drug because it's not safe on your body to be taking these strategies. But someone that has like a cardiac condition where they need it, then they would get an exemption. So that's where someone in our sport, we couldn't take that because it is a performance enhancing drug for a weighing category. So there's 14 different categories, and if you go on this like WADA website, it will go through all of it. And every January
they curiosity.
So you've got your World Anti-Doping Association, that's like the whole governing body. You've got the UK Anti-Doping, who's just a very informative website, and then Global DRO is probably the one for medication, and Informed Sport for supplements. So a lot to have a look at, but especially when you're getting tested, it's trying to mitigate every risk, and you don't realise that there are risks. So as I said, cold and flu, that's a risk in itself. Your protein powder could be a risk. So it's making sure,
Yeah. And to compete as a natural athlete, you have to register on you have to pay and register on, I know the one here is Irish Natural Federation, but whatever the equivalent is for the English one, I'm sure.
So we have the BNSF.
Oh, BNSF.
Yeah.
I always take blonde moments.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
I know all about that.
So here, that was very interesting. Actually, I must have a wee look up on that.
So normally you sign up. So the new UK Natural Association and the BNSF, the reason that you pay a membership is because that goes towards your anti-doping as well.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to say on that note?
No, I think that's pretty a lot on that.
A lot of information for everybody to process. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the questions. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I'd probably say like the biggest learning is making sure that you have the right coach. That's probably my biggest takeaway from all like the 6 years, at making sure you have the right people around you.
Did you do your own training programs at the start?
No, so I've always been with someone per se. The like since I've got more competitive, so about 3.5 years, I've been with a guy called Dan Ashcroft, and kind of that's where things have just soared since I've been with him. So I had like people at the beginning more for technical, whereas he's obviously programmed every single session for like prep for every competition. And like now again, a bit like being with Vicky, he just knows what I'm like, and he's like, oh, I can tell you're going to need a deload because you're just flagging at this point, and just always knows so well that I don't have to worry about that. I just what he writes, I just do it. Sometimes complain, but still do it.
Who doesn't complain sometimes? And as well, whenever you were saying you were doing the CrossFit as well, like you would have to relearn some of the lifts, because in CrossFit they do CrossFit you just lift and go with the flow, whereas if you're lifting heavier, like I know CrossFit they do heavy lifting and that as well, but it's not as heavy as what you would do in Strongman, which is the names in it, like Strongwoman, you know. So you're having to relearn how to like different techniques, is what you were saying. You stripped it back at the very start as well, and then just work from that too, didn't you?
It's probably actually I'm going more to it now. So I've just started going more into ollie lifting, which is actually helping a lot. So working on where are the things I need to work on, those like technical gains now. So at the beginning, obviously you're just learning how to do things, and then later on you start to learn how am I going to get that 1% difference. So I know like my press is probably not where it should be in like the general league. So what can I work on? So going a little bit more technical. So CrossFit, that's where it helps, because that's where they look a lot like ollie lifting. I think if anything, strongman, the reason I liked it is I hate squatting. I hate it to death. So whenever I do like a stone, a sandbag, anything, I'll avoid going into the pocket because I can't get in it, let alone out of it. So that's probably where I liked it over CrossFit. So not having to get, a squat snatch or a squat clean. That was the big thing about what I loved about strongman, is avoiding that part. So
you would never do powerlifting then? No.
I'm awful statically. They literally get my worst lifts and making me do it.
Oh no. So I think then the next thing is we've got the fire questions to do. So I'll start. They're just, you just have to answer them as quickly as you can. So favorite TV program?
Grey's Anatomy.
Favorite film?
Fast and Furious, the whole series.
Your favorite band?
Fall Out Boy.
Your favorite drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
Old fashioned.
Your favorite meal?
Sweets.
Tea or coffee? I know this answer.
Good coffee.
Your favorite holiday destination?
Oh, that kind of mixes it up. Oh, we'll go for a beach.
Grand. So if you had a bucket list, what would the first top 3 things be on it?
I really want to go to Fiji, and I don't know why. Since I read the Ben Ryan Seventh Heaven book, I really want to go there. Do something like Kilimanjaro or Machu Picchu. So I've done Everest, and they're kind of my next on my bucket list, but I want to carry my weight. And then probably my third bucket list is to have a week where I don't do anything, but that might be a bit harder to do.
Probably would be the hardest one for you to do right now.
It would be the hardest one.
Where was it? So early bird or night owl?
Well, midday pigeon. I'm not very good at either end.
Neither am I. Your favorite superhero?
We'll go Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Your favorite fancy dress? So if you're going out in Halloween or something like that.
Well, I've dressed up as a giant M&M or a giant strawberry, so generally it's food related.
Cool. It might be one of them protein queen cookies next time.
Maybe. Cookie got work.
Your favorite day in the gym?
Events.
Your favorite city? Your favorite city?
My favorite what, sorry?
City. C-A-T-Y. It's my accent.
It is.
C-A-T-Y. City.
C-A-T-Y.
C-A-T-Y.
God.
At least I'm not the only one who has blonde moments.
Oh, favorite city. Oh god, I'll go Australia. I really like being in New South Wales.
Cool.
Sort of a city.
Your favorite other sport?
Rock climbing. Still love that. Bouldering.
Yeah, cool. The performance you're most proud of?
I'll probably say Brits because it was just being consistent across the whole day. So I'll go with that one.
Cool. Who is your greatest of all time strongman and strongwoman?
Strongman. I've always been a fan of Gillespie just because like the workhorse, and I don't know why I've just fangirled over him the whole time. Strongwoman. I'm going to say Chloe Brennan because we started off quite at a similar point, and just watching her succeed and what she does has been absolutely amazing. And now getting a bit of coaching from her has been like phenomenal. Watching how
and her
she's
YouTube channel now as well.
Sorry?
Her YouTube channel as well.
Oh, I know.
I've been watching it.
Yeah, it's absolutely
she's a machine too. Your favorite cheat meal?
Was it? Oh, cookies, especially New York £1/2 cookies.
I've never had them. The person you most admire?
I'm gonna be really cheesy and be like, oh, my dad. So he's been there through all the times.
Cool. Your favorite animal?
Bunny, because I have two.
Your favorite event?
Anything where I get to move. Medleys.
Cool. And are you your favorite season of the year?
Summer.
And last one, film or book?
Oh, film.
Film. And that rounds all the questions up.
Oh, I know what city is.
It's my accent. I said it. It's actually like, apart from the Irish ones I've done for the interviews, everybody hasn't their that one, the city, and your favorite or meal. They can't understand me when I'm saying meal, and they're like, "What? What's a meal?" And I'm like, "Meal, something you eat." And then they're like, "All right, oops." So, thank you very much, Desi, for coming on. It's been good crack. No bother at all. It's really good having you on, getting to chat to you. I'll hopefully get you on. Oh, I forgot to ask you. See, I'm coming back to you. I always remember these other questions. What's your plans for the rest of 22? What are your goals?
Oh god. So
one I always like asking at the end. Because it means you have to hold yourself accountable now, because whenever this comes out and you hear them back, you're like, shit, I really have to make sure I do this.
Well, I've signed up to the 2 natural leagues and kind of the untested league. So I'd like to be able just to progress and try get back to another international stage this year. That's the aim. Cool.
And for the untested one, is that like the Britons and Englands and
so
OSG
the untested,
and all them?
We've got Midlands, and then I'm signed up to the OSG qualifier in July.
Yeah. Where's that? Where's yours? Where are you doing that one? Is that the Chaos
the OSG qualifier?
Yeah.
That's at Chaos in Preston.
Yeah. I was thinking of doing that myself. I don't know. I'll see how the rest of the days pan out. The rest of them pan out. Right. Now we'll go back to saying thank you very much for coming on. It's been great. And I'll let you get on with your day, sure, or your evening or your night, and get chatting to you again. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No bother.
Thank you for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and ring that wee bell. Ding-a-ling.